Hello, today I'm going to be giving you a tour of what I believe is Atlantis. And I've started off by showing you an overhead view of the Atlantic Ocean because wherever Atlantis is, the vast majority of Atlantis researchers believe that Atlantis is somewhere within the part of the globe that I am showing you in this view. Some believe that it's in the Mediterranean Sea over here, some believe that it's somewhere in the Americas, and others believe that it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I will take you to a feature that I believe is one of the primary features of Atlantis, namely the plain. This plain right here is a feature that is known as the Venezuelan Basin or the Venezuelan Plain. It is a feature that has been named by geologists and is not something that I just came up with. And as you can see, it has a measurement of around 350 miles in one direction and around 230 miles in the other. And it's approximately rectangular also. You can clearly see that it has a rectangular shape. I'm actually looking at it from the west instead of looking at it from a north-south direction, but it's still very much clear that you can see that it's approximately rectangular and has a length of around 340 by 230 miles, as I said before. And it also happens to be surrounded by mountains. In other words, it's not just a plain that just blends in with its surrounding environment, but um, there's a clear boundary to this plain, and it's surrounded by mountains to the east, right here. It's surrounded by mountains to the south. This is called the Curacao Ridge. This is called the Beata Ridge. It's surrounded by these mountains. And it's also surrounded by what would be mountains if this basin were dry. And because the height of the mountains of Puerto Rico are around 3,000 feet, 3,000 to 4,000 feet. The height of the mountains in Haiti reach as high as around 10,000 feet. And because the depth of this basin right here is around maybe 17,000 feet, these mountains would have been over 20,000 feet high if this basin had once been dry land and that all of this land had been dry. And so there's only two mountain ranges in the world that are actually higher than that, which are the Andes and the Himalayas. And so I will show you that this plain actually bears a striking resemblance to Plato's Atlantis. And here Plato is describing the plain. The country immediately about and surrounding the city was a level plain, itself surrounded by mountains, which descended toward the sea. It was smooth and even and of an oblong shape, which means rectangular approximately. And it extended in one direction 3,000 stadia, but across the center inland it was 2,000 stadia. 3,000 stadia is around 340 miles. 340 miles. And 2,000 stadia is around 230 miles. And as I showed you through Google Earth, the Venezuelan plain indeed has a length of around 340 miles. And it has a width of around 240 miles. And it's approximately rectangular or oblong. And it's surrounded by mountains on all four sides. The mountain range here, the mountain range here, here, and here. So if that in and of itself is very, very strong evidence that this could be a attractive candidate for Atlantis, but we can't just say that this is Atlantis just based on the plain, because the plain is just one of many different clues that Plato provided as to the nature of this lost city or this lost continent. But we have something else also of interest that I'll be showing you. And sorry about the water which is getting in the way. removing the water, we see that there's a feature called a Muertos Trough that lies on the northernmost portion of the basin. And it turns out that this, if we get a closer look at this, we see that the southern edge of this trough, or this ditch as I've called it, has a very, very high cliff on that southern edge, with the top of this cliff being around 15,000 feet underwater and the bottom of it being around 18,000 feet. So this cliff is around 3,000 feet high. And it runs, that 3,000 feet height continues for tens of miles, actually. So one might be thinking that the geologists say that this is a natural formation. But let's look closer at what Plato had to say about this. Plato is describing the plain. And again, he's saying it was mostly rectangular and oblong, as I showed you before. And he describes a ditch. The depth, width, and length of this ditch were incredible and gave the impression that a work of such extent, in addition to so many others, we'll get back to that later, could never have been artificial. Nevertheless, I must say what I am told. Without going into these measurements, let's just look at this ditch, for example. Plato said that there was a ditch in the plain of Atlantis. Right? This is the plain of Atlantis. Let's say that this is not the plain of Atlantis, and it's just a random plain that's somewhere in the world. Well, that plain happens to have a ditch that is a named feature called the Muertos Trough. That is truly incredible. If this was a natural formation, if this was a man-made formation, it is really inconceivable how it could have been built. I certainly can't imagine what technologies they must have used over 10,000 or 12,000 years ago to carve out a cliff that is over 3,000 feet high. It runs along the entire length of this trough, or a significant portion of it. And so this idea is that the works of Atlantis are truly awe-inspiring, and they are hard to believe, even when you've seen it. People say seeing is believing. Well, for Atlantis, seeing isn't believing. It's hard to accept because it contradicts everything we know about the capacity of human beings and the capacity of ancient civilization. But there's actually more. And in future videos, I'll be discussing other features of Atlantis that are extremely important. But I'll leave you with one extra stop on this tour. This is a feature that I actually showed you in a previous video. And this is what I call the escarpment of Poseidon. Actually, this is a god of Atlantis as described by Plato's dialogues. And so, to illustrate the grandeur of this feature in this formation, that's the name that I gave it, the escarpment of Poseidon. And I created another video going into this in more detail. And this is actually even higher. Remember in the Muertos Trough, there was like a 3,000-foot cliff on its southern edge? This is even higher. This is around 5,200 to 5,500 feet. In other words, it's a cliff that's almost a mile high, or slightly more than a mile high, that is almost vertical. As you can see, the incline of this cliff, it has to be around 75 to 80 degrees. And so I'll show you the other side of this. As you can see, this is just this amazing feature that seems to, that one could never imagine that it was man-made. But as I said before, Plato himself said about the works of Atlantis that they were that they were so great and gave the impression that a work of such extent, in addition to so many others, could never have been artificial. And because Plato was referring to the ditch when he was speaking about the incredible scale and grandeur of Atlantis's um, constructions, I am saying that this feature right here is actually referring to one of the others. This is one of the other features that people in the time of Atlantis described as incredible. In future videos, I will show you other interesting formations that I have found of what I believe is Atlantis.